right, so welcome everyone to our deep dive today, and this one is going to be all about Hymn 14. Now, this is a Tamil poem that I gotta really kind of sparked my interest when I first read it. You know, it digs into this whole idea of spirituality. It's about life's journey, and one of the things that really stood out to me was this concept of just, you know, embracing how things naturally flow, and also you know, kind of recognizing that there's this presence of the divine all around. And the really cool thing is we've got both. We got the Tamil verses, the original.
Yeah.
We've also got the translations in English, so we can really kind of get into like the finer points, the nuances of what the poet was trying to get across.
Yeah, and it is really amazing. You know how a poem that was written, centuries ago,
Yeah.
can still, resonate. It can still, feel so relevant to us, even today.
It really is. And, you know, you see that right away, like right in the first line, you know, it just says, everything happens on its own naturally without force. Like it's such a simple statement when you read it, but it just feels so profound. It's almost like, you know, it's like the poem is like gently nudging you. It's saying, hey, let go. You don't have to control everything.
Absolutely. It reminds me a lot of the concept of Wu Wei. Now, this is in Taoism, and it's this idea of, effortless action. It's about going with the flow of the universe, aligning with it.
Yeah.
And I think the poem is sort of posing this question to you, the listener. It's asking, where in your life are you kind of swimming upstream? Where could you maybe just surrender to the current a little bit more?
Yeah. That is a really great question for all of us to kind of sit with. But then the poem kind of shifts a little bit. You know, it goes from this big picture universal idea into something much more personal. And in verse 2, you know, the poet starts talking about their parents, and they say, "My father and my mother shine in their individual forms." I just love how it highlights, you know, the fact that each of them had their own unique influence on the poet.
Yeah, it's beautiful. There's this beautiful duality there.
Right.
It's like your parents, they often represent those foundational forces that kind of shape us into who we are. You know, they're like those guiding lights on our journey through life. It really makes me think about, the people who have been those guiding lights for you in your own life. Who are the individuals who have kind of illuminated the path for you?
Yeah, that's definitely something worth reflecting on. You know, who are those people? And then in verse 3, we're taken on this amazing journey, this cosmic journey, and it all starts with this incredible image. The poet says the sky itself is the great vessel, the first of all vessels. I mean, it just, when I read that, it just evokes this feeling of awe. It's just wonder.
It is a really powerful image. You know, when I read that line, the first thing that popped into my head, were all those ancient creation myths,
right.
and how so many of them, depict the sky as this sort of primordial womb. It's like, you've got the cosmic egg in Hindu cosmology, or the waters of chaos in Greek mythology.
Yeah, it speaks to this kind of this fascination that we have, as humans. This fascination with our origins, with trying to understand where we fit in, in this vast universe. But what I find really interesting is how, the poem, it doesn't really dwell on any specific creation story. It doesn't get bogged down in details. Instead, it just kind of goes straight to this idea. It presents this idea of a universal Lord, a Lord that resides in all of us. And you see this in verse 4, where it says, "The Lord who is the benefactor of all resides in the hearts of all beings."
Exactly. And it seems like the poem is tapping into this concept. It's this concept of immanence, this idea that the divine, it's not out there somewhere. It's within each of us, and it's throughout all of creation. And this is a theme. It resonates through so many different spiritual traditions. Whether you call it God or the universe, or maybe it's just this feeling of interconnectedness, of oneness. It's all kind of pointing to the same thing. And this brings up a question. For you, dear listener, where do you find your sense of the divine? Where do you feel that connection to something larger than yourself?
For me, it's definitely in those moments when I'm just filled with the sense of awe. a sense of wonder. It could be anything, gazing up at the stars, at night, or maybe it's listening to a piece of music that just really moves me, or even, just witnessing an act of kindness, something that really restores my faith in humanity. Those are the moments where I feel it the most.
It is amazing, isn't it, how those experiences, they can just evoke this feeling of connection, this sense that there's something bigger than ourselves out there. And in verse 5, the poet uses this very sensory image to describe the divine presence. It says, "The divine sweetness and joy flow like honey and purity." It's so vivid that you can almost taste it. That sweetness, that spiritual nourishment.
It's such a great metaphor. It really is, and it makes me wonder, for you, the listener, what experiences have brought you those feelings? Those feelings of spiritual sweetness, those moments where you felt deeply connected, joyful, and at peace.
Yeah, it's maybe it's through meditation or prayer, or maybe spending time in nature, or perhaps it's through acts of love and service, or maybe it's through creative expression. Whatever it is, I think the poem is suggesting that this sweetness, this spiritual nourishment, it's available to all of us. It's there, but then kind of in a bit of a shift. Verse 6, it brings us back. Brings us back to the everyday, to the ordinary. It says, "In the small assembly, think of the grand life ahead." And it's like this call to action. It's like it's saying, live intentionally, find meaning and purpose, even in the most mundane things, even in the seemingly insignificant.
Yeah, it really challenges us to kind of rethink things, doesn't it? It challenges that whole idea that we need to be doing something extraordinary to live a fulfilling life. The poem seems to be saying that even in the smallest gatherings, we can find that sense of purpose. We can tap into that awareness that there's this grand life unfolding right in front of us.
It really is. It's about realizing that every moment has potential. Every interaction, every experience, it all kind of weaves together. It creates this grand tapestry, this tapestry of life, and that leads us, to verse 7. And here the poem starts exploring. Well, it's a concept that's fascinated humans for centuries. The nature of the soul. What is it? The poet writes, "Even in the physical form, the soul does not decay. It grows, it thrives." It's a really powerful statement when you think about it. It suggests that there's this part of us, this essential part of us that transcends the physical. It goes beyond the limitations of our bodies.
It's comforting, isn't it, to think about that? This idea that there's this part of us that just keeps evolving, it keeps growing, even as our bodies, they age.
It really does, and it speaks to this belief in the soul's immortality.
Yeah,
and we see that in so many cultures,
right.
So many spiritual traditions. Now, the details, the specifics, they might be different, they vary, but the core idea, it's often this idea that it's a part of us that continues, it persists even after our physical bodies are gone, whether it's through reincarnation or some kind of afterlife, or maybe it's some other form of continuation. It's a big question, it's a huge question, and the poem doesn't give us any definitive answers, but it does invite us to consider our own beliefs. What do you think happens to our consciousness when our physical bodies die? What happens to that?
It's funny. It's something I think about a lot, actually. And honestly, I'm still exploring. There's so many different perspectives out there. But I do find myself drawn to this idea that our consciousness, our energy, it doesn't just disappear.
Yeah.
It doesn't vanish. But maybe we should move on to verse 8, which brings us to the poem's conclusion, and it's a powerful one. It says, "You will attain the highest truth by following the path of righteousness. This is my true word." And it's like this call to live ethically, authentically, to live in alignment with our values.
Yeah, and it raises some really interesting questions, doesn't it? I mean, what does it mean to follow the path of righteousness? How do we even define what's right, what's wrong, especially in a world where there's so many different perspectives, so many different values.
Right. It's definitely complex. There's no easy answer. But I think the poem is pointing to this idea that there is this universal truth. And it transcends cultural differences. It's something that we can access by living a life of integrity,
With compassion,
Yeah.
with self-awareness.
Yeah, it's about aligning our actions with our highest highest understanding of what is right. Even when we're faced with difficult choices, and maybe as the poem suggests, that alignment, it brings us closer. It brings us closer to a deeper understanding of ourselves and of the universe. So as we wrap up our deep dive into hymn 14, we've explored these themes of embracing the natural flow of life. We've talked about recognizing that divine spark within us all. We've pondered the nature of the soul, and we've talked about striving to live a life of righteousness. What are your main takeaways from all of this? What resonated most deeply with you? What are you walking away with?
It really is incredible, how this short poem, how it can spark so many profound questions, so many insights. For me, the imagery of the sky as that first vessel, it really stood out. It's this reminder that we're all part of something much, much bigger. We're all part of this vastness, and there's this interconnectedness, and it's something that we can easily lose sight of in our daily lives. Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day, right? And, for me, that honey metaphor for divine sweetness and joy, it's so evocative. And it reminds us that spiritual nourishment, it's not some far-off concept, It's something that we can experience right here, right now, in the present moment, through our experiences, through our connections.
Absolutely. And the poem's emphasis on natural flow, on surrendering to the current instead of constantly fighting against it. It feels so relevant, especially in the world we live in today. This world that's so fast paced, so chaotic, so often it's like the poem is just this gentle reminder to slow down, to breathe, to trust that things are unfolding exactly as they should.
It is a gentle reminder, isn't it? And that idea of seeking truth through righteousness, through living a life of integrity, it's a powerful message. It really is, and it's a message that I think we can all carry with us. Yeah, it is a powerful message, and it's definitely a challenge. To really navigate all of that, all the complexities, and to find our own unique path to truth. But maybe that's part of the beauty of it. The journey itself. That's where the growth happens. That's where the transformation happens.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. And it's a journey that we all take together, even though our paths might look different. They might be unique, individual. As we've been talking about this poem, I keep coming back to that honey metaphor. It's so simple, but it's so profound, and it makes me wonder, how do we cultivate that? How do we cultivate that divine sweetness and joy in our own lives? How do we access that spiritual nourishment on a daily basis?
That is such a good question, and I think the poem does offer some clues. Like embracing the natural flow of things, recognizing that divine spark, within ourselves, within others, and striving to live a life of integrity. I think those are all key ingredients, in that recipe for sweetness.
Yeah, I agree, and maybe it also involves cultivating that sense of gratitude for the simple things. Gratitude for the beauty that's all around us, for the connections that we share, with other people.
And maybe it's also about approaching life with that sense of curiosity, that sense of wonder, like a child. Like you're seeing the world for the first time, because when we're open to new experiences, new perspectives, that's when we create that space, space for that sweetness to flow in.
This has been such a rich exploration, this deep dive, and I'm so grateful that we had this chance to share it with you, and we hope it sparked something, sparked your own curiosity about hymn 14, and maybe inspired you to seek out the full poem. And discover its beauty and its wisdom for yourself.
Yeah, and as you delve into it, as you explore it, we want to leave you with this final thought. If righteousness really is a path to truth, what does that path look like for you? What choices can you make today to align your actions with your values, and to move closer to your own understanding of truth? What does that look like?
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. May your journey be filled with sweetness. And joy, and a deep sense of connection to the divine within and all around you.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.